Hi, and welcome to Helping People Perform, the podcast that gives you fascinating insights into those people whose chosen vocation is to help others perform at their best. From consultants to teachers, sports coaches to financial advisors, all of my guests share a passion for getting the most out of individuals, teams, and organisations. Enjoy the episode. Right, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Helping People Perform podcast. I'm delighted today to be joined by a good friend and hugely inspirational professional athlete, triathlete, world champion, Ironman, just come back from best ever performance in Kona in Hawaii. Welcome to the show, Laura Siddall.
Thank you very much for having me on. Thank you for the introduction. Yeah, a little bit intimidated now.
It's all good. Today is really about understanding helping people perform, and I'm really interested in your side of things because you've got a number of angles in your background and how you've worked in the improvement space, but you're also now obviously a professional athlete. You've got lots of people who help you perform and coach you and mentor you and help you, but you do the same for others, as well as this angle of how do you help yourself perform going through an Ironman race and preparing for an Ironman race, which is, I guess, is where the most of the discipline and the work goes in. So before we go into a lot of that, just a little bit of background about yourself. So how did you get to where you are today? What sort of things have happened in your career to date?
Yeah, and I will give the listeners a warning that we kind of met through my sister, and she's already warned me that I waffle on too much. So I'll try and keep it as succinct as possible with the answers. I always played sport at school, but it was very much the hobby. So went to school and did A-levels. I spent a gap year in the British Army as a second lieutenant in the Royal Electrical Mechanical Engineers, and then went on to university, studied mechanical engineering at Nottingham. Did various summer placements through that, and was still, I would say, was playing sport through that as well, but was doing more netball and athletics and things like that. But after university, started work for Shell up in the northwest of England in Chester on a refinery there. And it was through working for Shell I got the opportunity to do a 2-year assignment in Australia. So moved to Sydney, Australia, which wasn't too bad a gig, and worked for Shell out there, and that's where I started the sport of triathlon when I was actually in Australia. It's as we would see netball or football or rugby in the parks in the UK on a weekend with all the kids and adults and stuff. It's triathlon very much when you're in Australia. But yeah, was working for Shell for 2 years, and then they said, "Yep, that was it. You have to go back to the UK." I decided I was quite enjoying living in Sydney and swimming at Bondi Beach most of the time. So then took a job with a management consultancy firm. Sold my soul to the devil. As with that, realized that I couldn't do much sport when I was up all night doing proposals or projects. But that was kind of, I guess, an introduction into more business improvement work and working with government agencies and utility companies.
Right.
And then did that for a couple of years, and then went back into sort of a big construction company still in Australia. I'm doing project management and, again, business process improvement, but in finance area, which was a bit of a new area for me.
Yep.
But it was at that point where I guess I'd been doing triathlon as a hobby on the side, and I started triathlon as a complete beginner. So very much, I got into the sport with friends from work who were doing a charity bike ride, and they said, do you want to come along? So bought a bike the week before, and it was a hybrid road mountain bike, flat pedals. I'm not sure I owned any bit of cycling lycra at that point, and just enjoyed it. And they knew I did a bit of running, so they said, "Hey, look, why don't you look at triathlon?" And so searched online and found a beginners group in Bondi and signed up. So started as a complete beginner. And at that point I was age 29, but this was all doing it as a hobby outside of my corporate job. But found I kind of progressed through the amateur ranks and was lucky and fortunate enough to win. I think I got 4 world titles as an amateur over the shorter distances. And then sort of got to the point in my career where, I had a fantastic boss, I had a great job, great life in Sydney, but I something was not quite right, and I felt I wasn't really enjoying it, and more of my headspace, more and more of my time was spent in what I wanted to do in training and my next race and competition. So I almost got to a crossroads of what do I do? And because I'd done sport to a decent level when I was younger, but I'd never fully committed to giving it a go, because again, it wasn't ever seen as a profession.
Right.
I think that's changed now in the UK, I will add, but in Australia it's a little bit different. It is more acknowledged and accepted as a profession. And yeah, I just sort of decided without a lot of thought that I didn't want to look back in 10, 20 years time and think, what if? And so I resigned from my job, ended up moving to San Francisco to work with a coach over there, and took my professional license card, I don't know what you call it, as a professional triathlete, and went, full-time as a professional triathlete. That was at the age of 34, when most athletes are retiring. Moved to San Francisco, and went, full-time professional athlete. And here we are, however many years later. I definitely wouldn't have thought I would still be here, but I definitely wouldn't have thought this would have been the career. And it's taken me all over the world. I lived in San Francisco, I've lived in Christchurch, New Zealand, and split my time between there and Girona, Spain. And then as well, now my coach is based out of Boulder, Colorado, so now spending a lot of time over there. And as you said, just come back from Ironman World Championships in Kona, where I had my highest placed finish, and I will say at the age of 42, which actually I struggled a lot with the age thing, but now I'm kind of learning to accept it as a accolade is not the right word, but I feel I'm still improving, and that age should not be a barrier to that.
Yeah, and using it to your advantage in a lot of ways with the experience you've had, I'm sure.
Hopefully. And hopefully, like, while I still feel I'm improving and can try and give the youngsters a run for their money, I will do.
And just for my mind, for those listeners, I'm not necessarily a runner, and have never done a triathlon myself. I've done, go for the occasional 5K, but when you say the shorter distances, tell us about that. What's a short distance triathlon?
Yeah, so a short distance is what I would say is a sprint distance. So it's I think now 750 meter swim, 20 kilometer bike ride, and a 5K run. And then you have an Olympic distance, which is what you see at the Olympic Games. So we've had great success. So the Brownlee brothers, and then Georgia Taylor Brown, Alex Yee, Jess Limeth in recent years. And that's 1.5K swim, 40K on the bike, and then a 10K run. Now, I then do the other extreme of triathlon, which is the Iron Distance event. And I will convert back to miles now for listeners, which is a 2.4 mile swim. So that's 3.8 kilometers. And then it's 112 miles on the bike, so 180 kilometers. And then a marathon, so 26.2 miles, or 26.1, isn't it? And 42.2, something like that. It's a long way at the end of it.
And your time, just over 9 hours? Am I right in saying?
Yeah. I mean, it depends on the course, but in Kona this year, I was just over 9 hours. So I mean, 8.5 is, or 8:20, I think, is the women's world record, or the fastest time, I should say. And then I've also done races that take 10 hours just because of either the terrain or the conditions. So but about 9 hours.
It's some feat in and of itself. But one of the things I'm particularly interested in, and this sort of podcast is about helping people perform, and you've touched upon a couple of things already. One, your coach. Can you tell us a bit more about that relationship? How do what's your working relationship with your coach, particularly when I can imagine you're not always able to be in person with that coach as well?
Yeah, and I think so. I've been lucky. I've had incredible coaches throughout my sporting career, from playing netball, athletics early days to now. But I think now, and again, maybe that comes with experience. For me, communication is key with a coach-athlete relationship, and I think there has to be a mutual respect for each other, but at the same time, you have to be able to have those difficult conversations. You have to be able to challenge each other in the right way, so that she's getting the best out of me, and hopefully I'm getting the best out of her. And yeah, particularly important. So my coach, Julie Dibbons, she's British, but she's lived in the States for a long, long time. And I'm often around the world or in Girona. So we are talking sort of online through emails, through our training plans, but obviously on the phone, text message, and then we'll call every now and again. You do, but then obviously I'll go and spend more time in Boulder, Colorado with her, and you do get that benefit of being face to face. She just gets to see you every day. She can read the body language, and I'm training with a squad environment. But I think for me, having Julie working with me these past few years has just taken, I think that's been one of the reasons why at 42 I'm still improving, because she knows me far too well than I would like, but is able to give you, I guess, the tough love when you need it, and be that harsh voice sort of thing, but also be able to give you the right support, encouragement in the right way at the right times as well. And yeah, we don't always, it's not that we don't always get on. I'd say there are times when the relationship is tense, and that's either if my training's not going well and I'm particularly fatigued, and you struggle sometimes to see with reason and logic during big training sessions, but ultimately and deep down I completely trust and respect her and feel and have her back, and likewise she would have mine.
Out of interest, is her background in professional triathletes as well? In that spot.
So and it's an interesting topic as well, as to what makes a good coach. Do they have to have athletic accolades in the sport? And I don't think they necessarily do, or I would say it the other way. One of the top athletes does not necessarily make the best coach,
right? So
maybe it's that way is better. But I think so Julie has come from, she was a swimmer but a triathlete. She went to the Olympic Games, she's won world titles, and I think that has value because she knows what it's like in like a race week, in a race situation. She's got that race knowledge, but I would say also for her it's that she is fully invested in getting the best out of the athlete and wants the best for them, and sort of gives so much of her energy, headspace, time to writing the right training for you specifically to get the best out of you on race day.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. I've had lots of conversations with people about this in terms of, do you need to be an expert in a certain area to coach somebody well? And there's no right or wrong answer, is it? It's a lot about the chemistry and what drives people to actually perform. Yeah. Sometimes it needs that direct knowledge and direct experience. Sometimes it can just be about knowing the individual and motivating them.
Yeah, and I think it's that communication piece, knowing what to say to the person at the right time, or can you explain the concept? Can you explain what you're trying to achieve? And I think a lot with coach athlete, and this is in business or in sport, it's knowing what that common goal is and almost educating the athlete along the way, so that you're trying to get the best performance out of them, but you're trying to educate them so that ultimately they could do it themselves, if that makes sense. They have that knowledge and understanding and learning as they go. Having said that, she does do a great job at that, but I would not want to self-coach myself because it would be horrible. I'm quite happy having someone to tell me what to do and then just feeding back and having that conversation afterwards.
Right. Awesome. And I mean, you were saying a big part of your career was actually in the sort of continuous improvement, business improvement space as well. Did you find you sort of call on any of that experience or any of that knowledge in what you're doing these days, or is it a completely different environment being in professional sports compared to business?
Gosh, I mean, I would say yes and no. I mean, the thing about sport, which I often think back to businesses, and I think this is where the continuous improvement does overlap, but we probably could do it better in business, is that in sport we're constantly getting feedback. We've got data, we've got pace, we've got power, we've got time, we've got a coach there. You are literally, with every training session you do, you have feedback as to how it went and therefore how you can improve next time. And I'm always in, we use a training platform, so Julie Dibbs puts my training in. I upload the session and then I'll write any comments and feedback. So there is this constant continuous improvement, I guess. You're constantly looking. And I think sometimes we miss that in businesses because you only have a review at certain times of the year, or even, and it always shocks me when we cross over into a business environment from within the sport, that there's no review done after an event or there's no analysis done. And I'm like, how are we capturing what we're going to do better next time? So, and I think the work I'm doing now as well, I'm on the athlete board of what's called the Professional Triathlete Organization, where we're an athlete body trying to sort of give more of a voice to the athletes, but trying to take the sport forward to be more professional. And it's actually calling up a lot of my corporate experience to go back into almost, it's not quite a corporate environment, but like board meetings and those business and are we doing, if we have an event, are we doing a full analysis and where are we capturing those improvements and things like that? So from that side of things, I think there is a lot of crossover. I would say as well, I guess my engineering side and possibly that business improvement side can be a shackle at times, because you can overanalyze and you can get too caught up in the data and the specifics. And sometimes you just need to kind of go off feel, go off gut, learn what it feels like to push at a certain pace and not get overly hampered and overly shackled by the numbers and the data.
I mean, I spent a number of years sort of working for McLaren and bringing that F1 ways of working and approach into business. And one of the things I often find people would not necessarily argue against, but say your world is different to ours because you've got a race that is a known win or lose or get a position. And then, yes, you race again, but there's like a clear cycle as to you are racing, then you're training to the race, and then you're racing again. So the results are very clear and very regular. Whereas in business, it's often just continue. It's day to day, you're trying to do that. So trying to get people's mindset into a state of actually, there is an element of a race. There's a sale. It might be a sale, it might be a business meeting, something like that. That's your race. How do you train to get there, prepare yourself for that so that you can perform at your best in those races? So.
Yeah, totally. And one thing that is interesting at the moment as well is working, trying to get people to understand that and maybe it's the same with McLaren. There's that one driver and they're the one on race day and that's their result, that it's the whole team that goes into that. And that's the same. Obviously I'm the one on race day, but I have a whole team around me. And then taking that forward now with the Professional Triathlete Organization. So triathletes and triathlon is a very individual sport. It's very, and to some extent, athletes or even business people, entrepreneurs, you have to be very single-minded, single-focused to have that success. And so then is a struggle to say, but if you take a step back and the bigger picture for the organization or the company is that we all work together and have this common goal, and it might not be the best option for you personally now, but the long-term success is going to be better if you do X, Y, and Z. Right. Trying to get somebody who's always been very single-minded and single-focused on themselves to start thinking about leaving the sport in a better place and for the next generation is also quite an interesting concept as well to get people's head around.
Yeah. How do you persuade people that you should help their competitors get better?
Almost to some extent. Yeah, it's right, isn't it? But then you hope that that's only going to, competition is good because it will drive you to be better as well by taking everyone forward. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. And so you sit on that board. You've mentioned a couple of other things that you do in terms of helping others perform as well. So you've got the boards that you talked about with the professional triathletes piece. I know that you mentor and you coach and you do all sorts of other stuff. Can you tell us a little bit about some of those things?
Yeah. So, I mean, I coach a few athletes as well. And that's, to be honest, I enjoy the coaching and helping people. I do prefer it on a face-to-face basis. So I find it a little bit more tricky and a little bit more difficult doing online coaching of athletes where I think I've probably met most of them now, but when you haven't necessarily met them and you're building that rapport, you're trying to understand how they operate, how they train, and working with the data they provide. But I hope, again, so that's using my experience in terms of again, being able to guide them and educate them in how to train efficiently, effectively, balance it with their lives, because for a lot of them it's still a hobby.
Yeah.
I guess as a bit of a spin-off on that, a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity through one of my partners, a wheel company called Parkour Wheels. They offered me the opportunity to give a set of wheels away to anybody in any shape, way I wanted. And it'd been something I'd been thinking about it for a while. And it was a nudge in the right direction. I created a program for young female triathletes. So sort of from 16 to 20 could apply, and they got the set of wheels. I managed to get some of my other partners on board, so they were getting wetsuits, they were getting training kit, they were getting trainers. I think they got a helmet and some sunglasses and all of that sort of thing. And then also as an opportunity, I would coach them for a year. Right. And so again, to sort of help, I'm very passionate about women in sport and women in business as well. And so there was a piece of I wanted to support a female athlete coming through so that we don't lose them from the sport. We can encourage them through. As a result of that, I was so overwhelmed and blown away by the number of applicants I got for this program, and the caliber of athletes, and this because I wanted to help everybody. And I was like, I can't do everybody, but I've only got one person I can give this award to, or prize to, but I did want to help everybody. I created a community, or tried to create a community, where it was a place where anyone who applied to the program was in this community. They could ask any questions to me. I would try to give them advice. I would love to develop that further to be and run more sessions of educational sessions for them as young girls coming into sport. It's just been balancing that with everything else I want to do. But I would say that, so I did. So we had a girl, Letitia, she won the award. So she spent a year, and I was coaching her and training and helping her, and almost connecting her with a few other people as well, whether that was nutrition or mindset. And actually, funnily enough, she managed to qualify for Kona as well. So she competed in Kona as an age grouper as well. So that was pretty special.
Fantastic. Oh, because I know that bit of helping others and passing on your knowledge, it's not only good to pass back, but when I've done it, it really helps me improve my, think about what I'm doing, improve my own performance. Do you find the same?
Yeah, definitely. And it's something I think from the coaching athletes helps me understand then how my coach thinks a little bit, or I learned from my coach to how I then want to develop an athlete coach relationship with me as a coach. And for me, it's also about giving back. It is about finding value in what you're doing. Again, like I said, triathlon is a very individual sport, and if all the triathletes in the world disappeared tomorrow, no one really cares and the world will carry on. But if all the doctors disappeared tomorrow, we'd be in trouble. So it's like, how can I create value through what I'm doing, and knowing that I'm incredibly fortunate and privileged to choose this career, or have the opportunity to choose this career and follow my passion. But how can I then share that learning, share those experiences, share that opportunities with others, so that they can have, it doesn't need to be in sport, but that they can have that same eye-opening or opportunity to follow their passion. And that might be in business, that might be in sport, that could be across the board.
Yeah, even just having, as you say, that ability to go, actually, I could do this. I could step out and I could do this fully. I could do it professionally. I could dedicate my whole life and work to this.
And it's, you've just gone through that process of stepping out on your own. It's scary kind of thing. And but it, if there's something that drives you and you're passionate about it, it's kind of like it's worth taking that leap. And what's the worst that happens? Okay, it doesn't work, but it's not a failure. It's just you learn from that and you move on to the next door or the next cliff to jump off.
And I'm really interested in, there's obviously with a triathlon and with an Ironman distance and all the rest of it, there's motivation that's got to get you through the race. But I'm guessing that's nothing compared to the motivation that gets you through training when you haven't got the people on the sidelines cheering, you haven't got the race finish line at the end with the banners and the lays and everything else that goes on in Kona. So what are some of the things that drive you through those days of training where the weather's not great, you maybe not feeling too fantastic for whatever reason, you're just not feeling it? What motivates you to actually just get up and go and do it again and again to get better?
Yeah, and I would say, like, I don't jump out of bed every morning. Like, I'm following my passion and I love what I do, but like with any job, you don't necessarily jump up out of bed every day.
Yeah.
But I think what keeps me going is that, I have chosen this path and I chose to do it. And I think I have to remember myself that I'm incredibly lucky to choose to do sport and to follow that passion. So that is part of it. The other kind of thing I fall back on is that I get to do this. I get to go out and ride my bike or go running and swimming. And a lot of people don't get to do that for various reasons. So I think that helps. But also I am intrigued at improving and how good I can be. And that was a little bit of the driver when I left the corporate career. I just wanted to fully invest in one thing and see, like, how good can you be? And at the time, I had no aspirations of winning an Ironman, of being top 10 in Kona. It was just that if I fully commit to this, how good could I be? And I think that's what still drives me now. Like I said, I'm 42. I still feel I have areas to improve and I've got areas where I can get better. And that's what's driving me now. Like, the chances of me winning races with the caliber of girls we've got coming up through the sport is diminishing. But if I still feel I'm competitive, and if there's a chink in someone's armor that I can jump on to get the best out of myself, but because I still feel I'm improving and I still feel I'm getting better, that's what now gets me up and out of bed. And also, I think combined with that, the investment of the people around me and the time they've given in committing their time and energy to me and my journey, I feel that it's only out of respect to them that I deliver and execute my training and the job.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Out of interest, of the three, where would you rank them? One, 2, and 3 in terms of the running, swimming, and cycling?
In terms of ability or motivation?
You choose.
So I would say swimming is last. It's always something I've struggled with. Yes, got taught to swim as a kid, but never went to sort of the swim squads that people of America or Australia do. It's probably the one I struggle with the most in terms of getting up and going, doing a session, particularly when I'm on my own.
Right.
And if it's not going well. Now, if I'm with my squad and coach in Boulder and swimming is going well, then you kind of it kind of gets on a roll. And so when things are going well, it's sort of more motivating to go and do more and keep going. But I would say swimming is sort of the least, although I'm pretty happy. I had a great swim in Kona, so I'm pretty chuffed with that for me. And then I'd say bike and running is probably of an equal. Right. So I guess I have a running background, but very much track running, and now I'm doing marathons. And then I've found that the biking is a strength of mine as well. So those two probably fluctuate with how they're going, like motivational wise, and also strength wise. Although it's easier to get out on a run if it's raining than it is on the bike.
Right.
So that's
Oh, good. I was just really keen to see where that lied, both in terms of your ability and your motivation piece, but you've answered that well. You've mentioned a couple of times your partners, and you've mentioned the wheel partner there. Bit of an opportunity to give a shout out to some of the partners. I'm sure there'll be one or two that may get missed off, and we can make sure all the show notes include everybody that you want to give a shout out to. But any of those partners that you've worked with for a particularly long time, or have seen you and helped you through what you've done at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say Parkour, which is a British company. They do the wheels for the bike. I've probably been there, probably one of my longest partners. And I just like it's a small company, but they do fantastic research development. You really feel they engage with the athletes. So that's been a really fantastic partnership. And then I guess a couple of at Hoka, which is a running shoe company. I've been with them for, I think, 4 or 5 years as well now. Again, just love the innovation. I'm when I work with partners, I very much want to be involved. I'm not an athlete that just wants to take. I don't think that's value either. So I love it when I can fully engage with a brand, or they want to be engaged with the athletes. I'd say I will give a shout out, Cask helmets and De Boer wetsuits, the Magic 5 swimming goggles. Now they're cool because they scan your face, and so you get custom fitted swimming goggles that are personalized to your face through a scanning mechanism. So they're pretty cool. And then the rest of the team, I work with a sports nutritionist, the fourth discipline, and then a strength coach. She's out in Boulder as well, Kate, and then obviously my coach. So I'm sure I've missed a few people off there, and I apologize. But yeah, I'm again lucky that I have a great team around me. But also I guess I choose brands and people that have similar values and traits of performance that I like as well.
Yeah. And I mean, you look at a sport like triathlon and you go, well, there's nothing to it. You're basically running and cycling everything just in a wetsuit, maybe some shoes at some point. But I'm guessing every one of those bits of kit need to perform at those highest levels in order to help you. And you mentioned the scanning of the face for the goggle fit. There's all sorts of innovation going on in those worlds at the moment, isn't there?
Oh yeah, it's huge. And in fact, you can have this conversational discussion for days on end about the elements of, and you see it in Formula One, like how much is technology taking a role and how much should it be on the athlete's performance, So there's been a few, let's say, discussions around the type of wetsuit that people are using and what's legal, what's not legal, or where do those rules apply. Obviously, we're at no moment we've got running shoes and sort of the carbon shoe, and then how much, how thick the sole is and how sort of, I'm going to say springy for the ease of words, is that running shoe. And so how much of an advantage that gives you. And that's not just obviously in a race, but that's in training. You're recovering better if you have, if you're not loading up the legs. So yeah, I mean, it's, and I sit on both sides. Like I'm fascinated from the technology side of it and like my engineering hat. But also it's then like, how do you still, like, you want to see the advances of technology, and there's so much, like I said, we have data all the time, whether it's heart rate, power, it's sweat rate, it's your sodium concentration, it's your lactate in your blood, and glucose levels. There is so much around that some people use a lot. And it is fantastic in driving performance. But then I feel there's also that purity in sport of just you against the elements with the equipment and what you can physically get out of your body.
I came across a great term recently of infobesity, in that
I like that.
there's so much data around that it's actually bogging you down, and you can't, and it's we often would liken it in the world of F1 where yes, you can get more data, but it comes at the cost of a sensor that goes on the car that weighs your car down, slows you down. So actually, is it worth the investment? And I think where I'm coming to in a lot of the work I do with clients as well is about, actually there's too much data out there, in a lot of cases too much of the wrong data in particular. So it's like, how do you get people to focus on the smallest possible sets of data that give them actionable insights they can do something about? And the other thing that came to mind was actually a little story I used to say about the most expensive sensor on one of the F1 cars was Fernando Alonso's butt. Because how you feel the car, and you've mentioned before how you feel the race, the run, you can have the best tech in the world, if it doesn't feel right, you as an athlete aren't going to make it perform. It's not going to help you. So where do you sit on that balance then? Do you think you're more data driven, less data driven?
I think I'm probably a bit less, but I think and that's only because I probably get overwhelmed with the amount of data there is. And I think data is really powerful and can be, and I do use data. I mean, my coach will probably disagree with me. She thinks I'm probably like, in fact, my race plan, like we literally break the bike down into segments, and she gives me a power number, a time number that I'm hitting for each of that. And that really works for me in a race because it focuses me. But I think, if all that fails, you have to be able to ride off sort of just feel. I think what we're finding, and I love that infobesity phrase, is that like all the data, it can be valuable, but if you have the right people who know how to use it, and if you almost have the right experience, that they filter out the noise to just single in on, right, what are the few key points that are going to be really valuable in getting that performance to the next level. And that, I think, is where a lot of people struggle, because either they don't have the right support team around them, the right coaches around them to help them perform, or they just get so bogged down or overwhelmed with the latest trend, the latest fad. And it's about having that, either you've got to be incredibly knowledgeable and trained in those areas that you can do that yourself. But for me, I just want to focus on executing.
Right.
So for me, it's like having the people in my team that are able to filter out the right information or use the right information that they know works for me. But yeah, so a bit in the middle.
Oh, great. So a couple of more quick fire questions, I guess, in some of these areas as well. So one of them is, if you could help somebody perform with your experience, your knowledge, your background, be that an individual, a group, an organization, whatever that might be, who would you like to help perform with, taking your skill set to them?
I mean, I would say at the moment, I'm passionate about helping triathlon as an industry and as a sport perform. And that's through my role on the Professional Triathletes Organization. So what I would love to do is use my experience as an athlete, but my experience then in the corporate world, to really drive the sport forward, not only from a commercial side, but also helping the individual athlete. So how do you become a professional? How can we support amateurs transitioning to professionals? Can we give educate them around finances, tax, business, insurance, marketing, media, becoming their own business? And then, so I would like to, so that's, I guess, I would love to develop that more, going forward, and help athletes in that way, and help leave the sport in a better place.
Nice. And conversely, if you were to sit down, have a coffee, have a beer with somebody, or a group of people, an organization that you think would really help make an impact on your own performance, that doesn't have to be your Ironman time or anything like that, but however you define your own performance, who might that be?
So I had to think about this, because when you sent the question, this one through in advance, because oh gosh, I mean, there is so many people or so many teams, but the one I came out with, a couple, I would say, and very, I hope, sort of topical at the moment, Serena Weigman, the England women's football coach, and the England women's team. I would love to pick her brains on performance, on culture, and also like the players and what they developed as a team leading into the Europeans. I could probably say the same about like the England rugby team of 2003 when we won the World Cup, just that mindset and that cultural team structure. I mean, this is all sports people. And then the other person I always thought is Roger Federer as an individual athlete. I think he would be fascinating to talk to from a performance perspective, and also going through sort of setbacks and injuries and how he's maintained a high level of performance for so many years. I think that's a testament to who he is as a player as well. So
no, it's, I mean, really interesting. You think of Ironman, you think of triathletes, and you mentioned it's an individual sport played by a team. And a lot of those learnings that you've mentioned are teams. I'm sure it wouldn't just be Roger Federer either. It'd be Roger Federer and his team.
Exactly. Yeah.
Brilliant stuff. Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, we could chat for hours, I'm sure. But Charlotte would tell us off. So,
I know, I'm very conscious. Every time I'm like, you're going on for far too long.
It's great stuff. If people want to find out more about what you do, how you support others, some of the organizations that you've mentioned, I mean, I'll put a few links in the show notes, as we mentioned here, but how do people find out more about what you do and follow you and support you in that way?
Yeah, so Instagram is probably my most active social media. So that's at LMSid, Twitter at LMSiddall, and I have a website, laurasiddall.com. athlete page on Facebook and find me on LinkedIn. I guess that's all the social media.
Yeah.
I guess the other thing would be I'm part of a mentoring program called Unlocked, which is run by the Women's Sports Trust. So I would just say follow the Women's Sports Trust, follow the other female athletes that are involved in that program, follow women's sport and support that, but follow it for the right reasons, because it's fascinating and it's good. Like, I'll say for the first time this year in Kona, we had the women raced on their own day on Thursday, yes, and the men raced on the Saturday. And that was kind of huge for showcasing women's sport and the racing that we can do. So yeah, if anyone, like, obviously follow me, support me and reach out to me, but follow Women's Sports Trust. And I would say follow the PTO as well, the Professional Triathletes Organization.
Superb. Laura, absolute pleasure talking with you today. Really, really pleased that you could join us and give us some of your great insights and experiences in that world. So thanks for coming along.
No, thanks very much for having me on. Really enjoyed it.
Okay, speak soon. Bye.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you liked what you heard, then please give the podcast a rate, review and share. I'm Paul Teasdale, and from sausage making to banking, oil and gas to Formula One, I help people perform. If you'd like to find out more and have a conversation, contact me via helpingpeopleperform.com.